What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to this week's LUMIX Live. Kind of a little bit more of a techie conversation-ish that we're going to be going over today, so we will get to that in a few minutes. But yeah, lots of cool stuff to talk about. I've got a couple demos to show everybody for this week's live stream, and as always, if you have questions, make sure to drop them in the chat. Tag us at LUMIX USA. Just helps me see them, kind of address them as they kind of come in. We are on about a 30-second to minute-long delay with how I have YouTube set up. So when you put your question in, if you're new to this platform, just give it a little bit of time as I catch up to where you are when you put that question in. Yeah, so if this is your first time joining these broadcasts, these are weekly streams that we do here at LUMIX to give all of you an opportunity to chat with us, to chat directly with a representative from LUMIX, which I am. And ultimately, hopefully, you come out of these streams learning something new, inspired to maybe try playing around with some of the different new features that we have in these various cameras, but also be able to maybe have a conversation with somebody else in the chat who may have similar interests in photography and videography. Every once in a while, we will try to bring guests onto these broadcasts. We haven't done them in quite some time. We've had a lot of weird scheduling challenges with some of that stuff, so we're going to try to get back to some of those. But right now, we're going to be focusing a lot more on the tech side of the cameras and the tech that we're working with. Before we go too far into some of this stuff, I want to remind everybody here in the US about LUMIX Pro services. We have the Red and the Platinum tier available here in North America or in the US. The Red tier, if you've purchased a LUMIX camera within the recent time, get yourself registered, follow the QR code, or go to the link down in the description. This is free. It gets you into the service and support program, so if you happen to have any kind of issues or problems with your camera, you're into that program to get it sorted out. You can schedule your services through that program. But if you're someone who likes much, like higher levels of service, or you want something where you've got maybe a little bit more protection at your disposal, take a look at the Platinum tier. The Platinum tier is a paid level service, but that's going to get you the 3-year extended warranty that you have here in the US for new products. But on top of that, you're going to be getting things like 2-day repairs with next-day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs, so if you drop or break a lens or a camera, things that aren't covered under a warranty level kind of issue, you get a discount on those. You also get access to our hotline, so if you need to speak to someone in person, or you're someone who just prefers to speak to people in person, you have an access to that number. And then the annual sensor cleanings, lens calibration, firmware updates, stuff to keep your equipment in top shape as you move through seasons. Members that join the Platinum tier also get a cool welcome gift, which is I believe it is still the Peak Design co-design or co-collaboration strap. So that'll be a pretty nice benefit up over the traditional straps that come with cameras. So, yeah, as I said before, if you have questions, we're going to be talking about the app today and connecting in with your LUMIX cameras. We're going to do a bit of a walkthrough step-by-step on how to get your camera connected to the app. We're going to go over some of the various different features and functionalities that are available to you between the Wi-Fi connection and the Bluetooth connection, because there are some differences there. And then I'm also going to address some of the troubleshooting things that you may want to keep in the back of your mind. That'll really come down to what OS you're running on your phone, and just some various things to kind of keep in the back of your head if you're out there and you want to connect into the app and you run into potential some issues there. So throughout all of this, if you have questions, doesn't matter if it's about the app or what we're talking about today, just tag at LUMIX USA and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So before we jump into all of this, let's see, there were some comments and questions that came through when we started the stream up. Eric commented that he used the app. Awesome. It definitely can help with a lot of situations where you want to try to minimize camera shake and maybe you don't have a cable release. Daniel says, what's the preferred carrier to ship to Lumix Pro Services? I have the basic red version, and I'm going to ship my S5 Mark II regarding the noise issue I've been having. Also, do I need to send additional items, accessories that were included in the original S5 II box? Just want to get this issue taken care of. Thanks for all your help. So whenever you're sending something into the service department, or honestly, this is probably true for all service issues, not just us, most camera companies and everything, only send the camera. Do not send your accessories into the service department. There's no guarantee that they're kept together, because those are not products that are ours and logging and stuff like that. But yeah, when you send it, send in the camera. You can send the battery in with it so that, you know, they can make sure that power solution, all that kind of stuff is good to go. But yeah, just send the camera. If it doesn't have to do with a lens, don't send the lens. Put the body cap on it and send it that way. Don't send the strap, cables, the box, any stuff like that. As far as carrier goes, I think UPS, FedEx, any of the major shipment stuff works fine. We typically are using FedEx for our shipping. I believe actually some of the service department will use UPS, so either of them should be fine. When you coordinate the shipping through the LPS program, which you should be able to do on the platform itself, that'll give you the address that you have to ship it to get it taken care of. So make sure to follow all the instructions with how they want you to ship the product in. This way it gets categorized properly, brought in, and the service tickets are opened in the way they should be with it. If it's not clear what the product's there for, that kind of thing, or it's not part of what may have been set up in what they need, that's the things that can cause some delays when it comes to service, as they then have to figure out, you know, who is this from, what ticket is it for, that kind of thing. So, yeah, best advice, just follow the instructions that the LPS program sets up for you. Let's see here. Kudo says, Sean, can you give me a free camera? Since I addressed you as Sean, that means we are friends. Gee, I mean, no. I can't give people free cameras. If I could, that would be awesome. But yeah, good try though. A for creativity and effort. Let's see here. Red Frame, welcome. Damien, welcome. Oh, there we go. Getting a lot of questions in to come in now. All right, let's see what we've got here. Ulrich, custom settings on the GH6. On video settings, the shutter angle seems to not be part of the stored settings, and every change is used on all settings. Is there a way to change that? I don't believe there's a way to change that on the GH6, but I will have to double check. Where is my GH6? There it is. My GH6 is here, so I can actually... well, let me rephrase that. It's within arm's reach, so that means I can at least play around and check with some stuff while we're going through the rest of these questions. So, I will take a look at that. I think it's Ulrich. Damien, right on topic then. Let me see you say, is it possible to monitor in-app and simultaneously on the GH6 or any of the S5s? So yes, when you have the app connected, you will be able to use the rear screen of the camera. The power saving system works differently when you are connected to Wi-Fi, mainly because Wi-Fi is pulling more power from the camera than if you're not using it, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. If you are using the app and you let the camera sit idle for a little while, you will see that the camera will, the displays will go to sleep much faster than if you're not using the app. There is a separate setting in there for sleep during Wi-Fi that you can turn off so that the displays won't go to sleep. So you would just kind of have to go through there. When you are using the app, if you are manipulating the camera itself, you will get a notice on the display in the app that says camera operation, the camera's being operated. But as you shoot, you will be able to see what's going on. It basically is a carbon copy of the back of the camera's display in the app, and we're going to look at that in a few minutes and just kind of some of the things to work through with it. Tom says, I'm enjoying the B-RAW output on the GH6. However, I noticed only 2 channels of audio are passed into B-RAW. Did I miss configuration option on my camera, or is this as expected? I believe B-RAW and RAW, the way that that stuff is compiled over HDMI, it is 2-channel audio. I don't shoot enough with RAW over HDMI, mainly because I really don't need the post-production side of it to have a full check-in on that. But when I do get my Video Assist recorder back, I will take a look at that and see. Certain things when you are recording RAW are going to be a little different. Internal recording is what's going to get you probably the full-fledged capabilities that the camera has, because it's all one contained unit. RAW external recording really is that kind of design for being able to say, like, hey, this is primarily the video side, and the audio feed that's going through it, while yes, you're going to get the audio on the Video Assist, it's just going to be different because it's recording into that device over it's HDMI audio. So most of the time with RAW over HDMI, or honestly any video over HDMI, I'm usually turning audio off completely and recording audio separately. I do that using, where did they go? I do that using my Rode Wireless Go 2 system. Full transparency, Rode sent me these. So I use these, and I just have it where it records the audio internally onto the transmitter. So then I can just pull that. I do a clap sync at the beginning, and then I just sync my audio that way. Advantage of this is that it's upscaled 32-bit, so it gives you a little more flexibility in post with it. And then you have this recording. So HDMI out, I turn audio off. It gives you better latency over HDMI. And then I use external recording just to sync them up. Premiere's gotten really good at just auto sync, and that's my editing of software of choice. Michael says, are the diopters different between the S5 Mark II and the G95? Can I get the S5 Mark II as clear as my G95? I wear contacts and use the white letters in the viewfinder to judge. There are differences in the diopter adjustments between various different cameras. The G95, which if you're not in the US would be the G90 in some other regions, that one's diopter adjustment is, if I even have that specification, I may not have that information right at the tip of my fingers here. There will be differences. Some of the Micro Four Thirds cameras have much more diopter adjustment, because a lot of times it kind of just depends on the optic block chosen. G95 has +4, -4, and then the S5 Mark II has S5 Mark II. The S5 Mark II will have. Let's go into the spec list here. Get you this info. Spec list on the diopter. So it's -4 +4 for the G95, and it's -4 +2 on the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX. So my guess is you're probably in the plus side. You have a little bit more control on the G95 than you do on the S5 Mark II. Victor, on the S5, when I record in A mode, auto ISO, shutter angle gets to 180 and then starts raising ISO. But on my S5 Mark II, shutter gets to 358. Is there a way to lock it to 180 like on the S5? With the video function, when you say A mode, are you on A on the top dial of the camera? So that would be the photography mode. That's going to be just whatever shutter speed and aperture the system is going to choose for ISO. With shutter speed, I think honestly on the original S5, there's going to be some exposure choice changes between those two cameras, especially when you're in a photo mode. So there's not really a way to lock it there unless you are in creative video mode and you set it to for aperture exposure. In a case like that, you're telling the camera by being in an aperture priority mode, especially with auto ISO, that you're fine with the shutter speed changing. or yeah, with the shutter speed changing. So the only other way to really lock that truly is to set it in shutter priority to lock the shutter at 180 degree or whatever frame rate if you're not using degrees. Other than that, it's a variable. It's going to choose that to change. Whether or not it uses ISO or the shutter to change there is going to be up to just the environment and the camera. So yeah, that's just how that works, because you're letting shutter speed and ISO be the variable in those two scenarios. The only way to lock it would be either full manual or in shutter priority under the creative video mode, and lock your shutter speed to 180 degree. I'm going to say, Paul, is there a trade-in service for old cameras? I have a GH4 and would love to purchase an S5 IIX. We do trade-in programs through our dealer network. So some dealers offer trade-ins for their equipment, others don't. Take a look at your local dealer. Keep an eye out for promotions and stuff like that. Every once in a while, there's trade-in programs that we run with dealers to get you a little bit extra for some of the older equipment. But yeah, those will all be run through dealers. We don't do any of that stuff direct as Lumix. Why does the camera screen go black when using the app? That's a good point. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All right. I'm going to do 2 more questions, and then we're going to jump into the demo here. Kudo says, on a serious note, the focus peaking feature on the camera a lot better than the one in external monitors. When transferred over HDMI, becomes less softer and less noticeable on the external monitors. So, focus peaking, when you're sending it out over HDMI, the thing you have to remember is that the UI is not being scaled over HDMI. This is something that we've gotten a lot of commentary about in the past, where you may be wanting to use an external monitor to, just have as a monitor to show the camera's info. Depending on the pixel density of the monitor you're using, say you're sending 4K out from the camera. A good example is like how we do when I have the screen set up for here. The monitor resolution that you're working with and the resolution that you're sending out from the camera are going to affect how the UI looks. That also extends to focus peaking. The back of your camera is a much lower resolution screen. On a camera like the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX, it's a 1.8 million dot screen. When you're looking at a 4K TV, 4K display, a 1080p display, those, while the resolution is there, you're taking a 4K output, if that's what you've got your camera set to, and then downsampling it into that 1080. So your UI gets much smaller. By extension, your focus peaking that you're sending over HDMI is relative to the resolution you're sending. This is why the vast majority of times, if you are using an external monitor, use the focus peaking on the monitor, not over HDMI. It's going to get you probably a better look and feel for your peaking that you see on that monitor, and you get the benefit of not having to have the UI overlaid on that external display. So it can give you a little bit cleaner look for how that system works. And then, all right, let's do one more question, and then we will jump here. Actually, I'll do 2. Any chance we can have timecode embedded to metadata instead of the audio track on the S5 Mark IIX? I can forgive the missing timecode port then. So timecode embedded in metadata, it's not going to be on these cameras, so you're going to have to use the audio channel for it. You'd have to go to a camera like the S5 Mark II, or not the S5 Mark II, the S1H or a GH6 that have a timecode input terminal for it to be embedded actually in the file. So different tools, different jobs. From day one, we've kind of always pointed out that the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX, while they are incredibly capable cameras, they are mid-range cameras. If you need things like higher-end timecode function, you need just some of the other higher end pieces like that, Genlock, stuff like that. That's where the higher end Pro Series cameras have those functions for it. So let's talk about the app now. I've rambled on enough about topics that aren't actually part of the topic here. So let's talk about the LUMIX Sync App. So if you are someone utilizing basically any of the cameras since our G95 release, so that would be the S5 Mark II, technically even the GH5, GH5 Mark II, the GH6, technically even the original or was it the original S5 and the I think the G9 has the new app as well. You're going to be working on the LUMIX Sync app. We used to have an older app called the Image app. If you are still using that, stop. Move to the Sync app if you're on any of these newer cameras since the G95 release. Older cameras have gotten firmware updates. The GH5 series as well as the G9 was given an update for this. You're going to be on the LUMIX Sync app. Now, there's a couple things in getting your camera set up, especially if you've never used it before, that I want to cover. First of those is the initial pairing process. So with these cameras, well, yes, you can set a Wi-Fi setup out of the box with it. You can do that. But I actually recommend everybody set your Bluetooth connection up first. So we're going to walk through right now. I just got to wait for my S5 2X to turn on here. We're going to walk through how to actually set that up. So I have my mobile device here. I'm working on Android. This is one of the Fold series phones from Samsung, just because it gives me a better preview here. So the first thing you're going to do when you open the LUMIX Sync app is either you're going to get prompted, if you've never opened the app before, to initiate Bluetooth connection, or if you have had it connected before and you're working just with a new camera, you can click the little 3-button settings up here. And you're going to see you'll have an option for Bluetooth setup. You want to make sure that that's turned on and that the Bluetooth is turned on in your mobile device. That's step one. From there, click the back arrow, just go to the main screen. Now, you're going to click on the question mark icon. Now, this option here is basically the built-in tutorial on how to wirelessly connect the camera for image share, import images that you've already captured, so on and so forth, or to use things like a home network to connect the camera through. So we're going to be focused on up here is the camera registration or the pairing option first. So what you do here is just literally tap on that icon and then follow the prompts on the screen. This is going to tell you to make sure that your phone's Bluetooth is turned on. It's going to walk you through what to do on your camera. In this case, it's going to be go to the set menu. You're going to scroll to the Bluetooth option, which is under the setup menu in the camera. You're going to tell the camera to go into pairing in that mode. And then you're going to sit and it's going to say, hey, check the back of the camera here. So I'm going to click next, and now we're into waiting for the camera to show up. So from here, I'm going to follow those instructions, go to Bluetooth, go to set, which is going to set up the pairing option on this, and I'm going to select pairing. So now on the back of the camera, it is in the mode where it's saying, hey, connect me to a device. You'll see on my mobile device, it is now connected, and it says S5 Mark II X, and then it has the identifier for the setup here. So I'm going to tap on that because that's the camera I want to connect here. And now what the system is doing for you is the camera and the phone are talking to each other over Bluetooth. It is telling the camera, hey, turn your Wi-Fi on. So the camera turns the Wi-Fi on, and it creates the access point, which is the camera's name, and then its identifying number. Then the mobile device the app is telling the mobile device, hey, connect to that network, no matter which other one you were on. So I was on my home network. It now overrode that and said, hey, connect to the camera. So here, now it says pairing has been complete. Click OK, and then we're good. Your screen now changes on the app. This is where you'll now have the highlighted which camera you have attached, which is the top one up here. The ability to go in for image transfer, shutter control, other options, remote shooting, and then it tells you which connection method you're using. Once you have that set up, it makes using the app so much faster. And this will be the same if you're using an iOS device. Though there are some things that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes about what you have to be aware of with both of these depending on the OS version that you're on. So to start with, under Bluetooth, what controls do you have? So first of the main kind of settings you have here is shutter remote control. So if I tap into here, you'll see that I'm connected over Bluetooth. I'm connected to my S5 Mark IIX, and I have the ability to tap the button and take a picture. I also have the ability to tap the video record button and start video recording on my camera as well. Now, I don't have my S5 Mark IIX hooked up to the switcher here because I have to invert this display, and it's a whole thing. But you have the ability to both trigger video and stills, but you also have the ability to tap and drag down to do long exposure work. So if you're out in the field and you don't have a cable release to use with your camera, your mobile device can act as the Bluetooth trigger for both regular standard stills capture, burst shooting capture, but then also for timed capture. So if you want to do long exposure work, you can use the app for that. So that's what your Bluetooth functionality gets you as far as controlling your camera. The other functions here are going to depend on which camera you have attached to the image app or the Sync app here. And this is going to be found under the Other tab here. So if I tap into Other, because I'm connected to an S5 Mark IIX, you'll see that I have the live streaming functionality. This is how you can set and program your camera for live streaming direct from the camera. You can pick either Facebook or YouTube as the default kind of outlets for this, or you can plug in your own RTMP or RTMPS stream. So that would be, you'd use the stream with RTMP if you want to use this as like a camera to send to Twitch, if you're doing like IRL type streaming, or log in with YouTube or Facebook to your accounts that are on your mobile device to plug directly into those platforms. Then from there is how you can tell the camera which network connection you want to be working to, and just kind of go through there. So it lets you kind of have control over that stuff. And actually, as I just see one of the chats here, just went to the website and it says functions are limited on GH5, GH5S, and G9. Still have to use the image app for full functionality. It's not completely incorrect. The original image app lets you do things like the geotagging. If you want to do geotagging on a GH5, G9, or a GH5 Mark II, or a GH5S, those you have to use the image app for because you have to bulk load geolocation info. If you're using the newer cameras, it's full blown in the Sync app, so you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff because that's done over Bluetooth. The other Bluetooth setting here that you have is camera settings copy. So this will depend on what camera you have attached to this, but I can tap in here and then save out my camera settings. The important reason why I am stressing that you want to connect to Bluetooth first with this is Bluetooth has already set up, after you've gone through this process, it has already set up the connection needed for Wi-Fi on your app. And as you can see, you have some controls in Bluetooth, but you don't have a ton of control. You don't have actual camera control when you are in the Bluetooth function. To do that is where you're going to tap things like remote shooting or image transfer. So I'm going to tap on import images. What you'll see here is that the phone is now going into the setting the camera up to connect to Wi-Fi. In this case, just like it did during the pairing option, it has reached out to the camera, said, hey, turn your Wi-Fi on. Now the phone is being told by the app to take the information and then connect to that SSID that you've connected to in the past. Now, depending on the interference in the environment that you're in, so if I'm in like a really busy environment, this can take a little bit longer than if I'm in a bit more of kind of an enclosed environment. Once it's connected, it's going to drop you here if you're doing import images. This is the SD cards that you have in here. You have the ability to change between SD card 1 and SD card 2, and it just works straightforward. Real solid. But when I go back and I look at the main screen here, you'll see that I am now connected over Wi-Fi, and I still have that Bluetooth connection set up. This is for a couple of reasons, and we'll talk about them in a second. But this is where I can go in and tap remote shooting. Remote shooting is where the vast majority of your controls are going to come from when it comes to working with this camera. So I'm going to put a memory card in my S5 IIX here, so we can get rid of the no memory card notice there. And what you'll see here is that I have basically a carbon copy of my camera's display on the back of, or on my phone screen. So I have indicators like that I'm connected to Wi-Fi, that my Bluetooth is connected, what my stabilization modes are in. I even have touch tab access for various different settings here to be able to change like point scope settings, to my AF for tap to focus or my tap to auto exposure. But these are all just kind of the basic controls. Along the bottom here is where I have things like changing my display. So whether or not I want to have all the info there, or I can tap display again, have all my info up. This is also where I have my white balance control, so I can cycle through and pick what white balance I want to be shooting at. I have my ISO control, so I can be adjusting whatever ISO I want to be at. You get the point. You also have full quick menu access here. So depending on how you've got your camera set up for quick menu, will allow me to come in here and say things like I want to change my color profile, the various settings for auto white balance, the aspect ratio, metering, even some of the video functionality. These are all the basic setups that you have for just setting the camera up how you want. So right now I have, because I'm set shooting in one of my LUT profiles here, I think I'm on LUT 4, which is my Velvia kind of look here. But I can even go down in and I can change it to monochrome if I wanted. And you see the image kind of update on screen as you're doing this. So you get to pick whatever profile you want. And it makes it pretty straightforward to be able to remotely work with this camera without having to actually be right touching the camera while you work. So once you have those kinds of things set up, you'll also notice that I have the video record button here, as well as my main shutter button here. So I can tap on this, take the picture, and it's stored. Now, once you've actually kind of set this whole thing up, and let me just format this card here. This is where one of the questions before is, can you use them simultaneously? Can you have the app up while you're actually trying to kind of look through the camera? And well, technically you can. You can be using the camera, but you'll notice that you get that pop-up on the screen there. You get the camera operation in progress. If I take a picture with the camera, you'll see that it will update, and then you'll get the little playback information down in the bottom, which is how you can go back and review your images. So you do have control over that, but it's an either-or for what is actually controlling the camera. You can use this as a display, but if you are using the camera primarily, it's going to lock out being able to change anything on there. So, all right, let's take a look at a couple of questions before we go much further with this. Where were we? Okay. Does the app have split screen capabilities? Useful to operate gimbal and camera? Depending on the... I mean, the app has the ability to be set up for split screen, like if you're on like the device I am, where I can run two apps simultaneously. So you can do that, but the app itself doesn't necessarily have a split screen function. Rode with S5 Mark II has a lot of noise. Why? I haven't run into any problems with noise, and I'm using the Rode Go Wireless 2s. I've been using them for quite some time now, and I have zero problems with them. Might be something with your setup that could potentially be causing an issue. Let's see here. Where were we? Just went to the website. Okay, yeah, that's where we were. Why does LUMIX Tether 2.5 not work over Wi-Fi with the S5 Mark IIX? Technically, it should work. 9 out of 10 times, you have to check your network connection setup. Depending on how you have your camera set, if you've got your camera set Wi-Fi to your home router, make sure that your computer can actually view the devices on your network. Make sure the camera's registering right. I don't have a problem with that here in my network. So it should be working. My guess is take a look at just what you've got going on with the way the setup is, how the camera's being seen in your system. One of the things I use for that is a program like Glasswire to see what devices are registering on my network and whether or not my desktop can see it. Let's see here. Can you record RAW to SSD without a recorder or monitor? Nope, you have to record to an external recording device, which that external device is what's doing the RAW capture. Sync App works for geotagging with the G9, been doing it recently. Okay, that's probably a minor, more up-to-date setup then. I haven't used the image app in years at this point. Also, why isn't it possible to get RTSP stream from the S5 Mark II over Wi-Fi? Example, OBS, opening a stream from the camera's IP. RTSP is limited on the S5 Mark II X. The basic S5 Mark II does not have streaming functionality. The Mark II X is limited for RTSP over a hardwired connection because of typically the bit rates that are being sent and the latency. Wi-Fi, it just doesn't. We just don't have it set for Wi-Fi on that system. Is it true that the MFT mount doesn't know the precise focus distance of a lens, so it isn't possible to set the focus with LiDAR measurements? I don't know where you're hearing that information, but I'm like 99% sure that is false. So, I know that there's been a lot of talk about LiDAR because of the announcement made in China a couple of weeks ago with the DJI system, but we have not made any statements or confirmed or denied whether or not Micro Four Thirds is going to get that compatibility. Just that it was demoed on the I think it was demoed on an S1H. So there is no information as to whether or not G-Series can do it or be compatible with it. But I can tell you that we know precise distance because you can program the focus throw on the lenses. We know where the distances should be. We can calculate them. We measure it. It is part of our spec. Doesn't mean that all Micro Four Thirds lenses out there from other manufacturers would be within that spec. So that may be where some of that comes from. Let's see here. Albert, is live streaming also on the S5 II? No, unfortunately it is not. It is only on the S5 IIX. Peter Gregg. Oh, hi, Peter. How are you? It's interesting to see you joining the stream here. I've watched your videos for quite some time. 10 feet from the S5 IIX, from the S5 II connection drops often. The inside the house in my house. Walk path would be good. So for this, this is for remote control from the phone. Yeah, so the thing that I think a lot of times we forget is that cameras in general, there's a balance that has to be made for how strong of a Wi-Fi signal you're going to be sending, and then also accounting for what materials you're going through. A lot of companies start using polycarbonate and plastics for the bodies, which is easier to pass the Wi-Fi signal through than a metal chassis. But in general, I found if I'm taking these cameras out into, like, you know, kind of like the backcountry to do some astrophotography with them, setting the camera up on a tripod and then going back into my car and just kind of like rolling the window up, I still have a strong connection for it. It's not like I'm ever really going to be more than 10 feet from the camera. The bigger problem I've seen is really down to the congestion in the area that you're in. Because the Wi-Fi works on 2.4 gigahertz, that's a very congested signal. So the more interference in the area, the lower your distance is going to be. So sometimes it could just be down to the environment. If I take this camera downtown here in Austin, I can run into some situations where I don't really get that far of a distance for it, and I have to have them pretty close. So hopefully that helps. But I also see it says, I haven't been able to change f-stop from the iPhone. What would be blocking that in video mode? 9 out of 10 times, that is the iOS kind of little gremlins that pop up because of the way their system works. Shouldn't really have any problem with aperture, especially in video. The only other thing that could block it is just depending on what mode you've got it in, but I know that you have a ton of experience working with these, so I wouldn't think that would be the case, but it could be. Let's see here. Your S5 II, this is from Jay. Your S5 II has terrible preamps when I use mini shotgun or go 2 with TRS. I ask because need official answer. Volume at different conditions goes from 0 to -12. First thing I would take a look at, Jay, is the cabling that you're using. As I said, I use the Rode Wireless 2s all the time with this camera, and I have no audio problems with it at all. I'm using the supplied cable that comes with it. If you're using something other than that, you could be introducing problems with the cabling, depending on the shielding, the environment that you're in, what kind of interference you could be pumping into it just because of the cabling quality. But yeah, I mean, if you're a high-end audiophile, you probably would be recording audio externally anyway to get things like 32-bit natively in an external recorder. Internal-wise, the Mark II, the Mark II-X, they've had some of the best preamps I've worked with as far as control goes. So just play around with some of that stuff. Let's see here. What picture profile are you using right now? Main camera is, I'm actually using the real-time LUT function. So my S5 Mark II is set up on, in the real-time LUT color profile, but I have the Like 709 LUT applied to it over HDMI for this. On my typical camera that I'm shooting with, I'll usually be using some of the more kind of just regular, kind of film emulations and stuff like that. So, yeah. Okay. Last one here. Why should RTSP over Wi-Fi via IP be impossible due to bitrate when streaming to, example, YouTube is possible? It's not saying that it's not possible on the camera. It's that our design choice, because of what the system was designed for, is based in hardwired for RTSP. Is that something that could potentially change? Possibly. But at this point, that is just how the system is set up. It's got to be hardwired for RTSP. RTMP is over Wi-Fi. And most of the time, at least in all the applications I've been involved with that have used the RTSP function on like the box cameras, they're using that over with the 50 megabit per second options or the 25 megabit per second options, and there's just the reliability side of hardwire versus Wi-Fi. So not saying it's impossible, not saying that we would never do it, just at this point the current design was for RTSP over a wired connection. So it's a lot more stable than Wi-Fi. Cool. All right. So we were talking about the app here and some of the general controls. Now, some of the parts that I think get forgotten about or overlooked in the app is that you also have full menu control of the camera. So if I tap on the settings options here, I can go in and actually change a lot of other functions here that you may not realize you have the control over here. So things like, if I want to shoot in high resolution mode, I can actually go in here and set the camera up for it. I can change my bracketing options. I can change the AF settings if I come in here. I can change if I want detection on. What detection do I want to be using? What mode do I want to be using? Even down into all of the video recording options. So like I said, I have an S5 IIX attached here, which means I have tons of video recording options. But because I have my camera in the photo mode right now, you'll see that I'm limited to the 100 to 200 megabit. There's some 400 options in here. You have all of these different options available to you at the tip of your fingers when you're into this app. Now, most of these options, when you go to click record, you're going to have to make sure that you put the camera into the video mode to utilize them. But you can change them all here. And for some, this can be an easier way to actually view and see which modes you want to record in, because you do also have this control in the quick menu. So if I go into quick menu, I can tap on the video recording function, and you get the shorthand versions of what video options are available. So you have multiple different ways that you can set this camera up for picking resolutions, frame rates, all that kind of stuff. So if we go back into the main settings option here, if I scroll down, you also have the options here for auto transfer, selfie shot, rotate display, and then your live view quality here. Live view quality, you're going to have between standard and low. This is going to really kind of change how fast the display refreshes on your camera. So if you are in an environment where maybe the camera keeps dropping Wi-Fi or the camera and the phone keep disconnecting from each other, one of the first things I recommend a lot of people do is go into that setting and change that to low. This way you're using a lower bandwidth between the camera and the phone, and it can help make the system a little more reliable. In my particular setup here, even though, like I was saying, the 2.4 gigabit or gigahertz is a little crowded in the vast majority of areas, this tends to be a pretty solid, just general setup. I don't really have too big of a problem in my apartment here. If I go downtown, I typically have to set this to low. I get a more reliable connection between the two. But 9 out of 10 times, if I'm out using this in the field, I'm usually just using the Bluetooth connection. This setup is cool, the control side, but if you're really wanting to be able to function with this camera over Wi-Fi, most of the time it's because you want to be able to review your images, or you want to be able to transfer images to your mobile device. And that's where, if we go back to the kind of main screen setup here, that's where, like I said, you have two options here. You have the remote shooting, and then you have the image, import images. So if I tap on import images, it's going to open the card up. In this case, I've got one card in the camera, and it's going to give me the image that I had just captured. Now, the app is going to also tell me the date and time that it was captured at, so it kind of helps for organization there. But if I tap on the three options, the settings option up here, this is where I can change what it is that I'm sending from the camera to my phone. So I can come in here to image size, and I can send a large, medium, or small. So this is what compression, how compressed do you want the image to be when it gets sent over to your mobile device. Typically, I'm doing original because a lot of phones these days, and this isn't always the case, but a lot of phones have a ton of storage, so I don't mind taking the full-blown high-res images over, especially because I'm syncing them to my cloud storage anyway, and I can just delete them locally off the device. Then I have the format that you want to send over. Here's where I can do JPEG, RAW plus JPEG, or just standard RAW. Usually, I will just be sending RAW images over to my phone, and then loading those into something like Lightroom Mobile. And at that point, all you do is just tap Send It Over. The first time you want to send an image over and you want to send RAW, it's going to tell you, depending on the OS, your phone may or may not be able to display the images correctly in the apps that you're using for general playback. Luckily, S5 Mark II, S5 Mark II X, all of the current cameras in both iOS and Android seem to be working perfectly fine in Google Photos as well as iOS for photos. So once you tap OK, give it a couple of seconds, it's transferring that image over, and that's all being done with Wi-Fi. The last little bit here that I wanted to mention with the app really comes down to, if it would help if I actually tap the button, really comes down to just kind of general kind of control with this setup too, and what you can do above and beyond depending on the camera that you're working with. If you have an S5 Mark II or an S5 Mark II X or even the original S5, the firmware updates that we are providing to the cameras can be pushed through the app. Now, I don't always recommend doing your firmware updates this way, but it is a function that has been added to the app. So you can do them this way, but I am someone who much prefers loading the firmware onto the SD card and then sending it into I am someone who prefers loading the firmware onto the SD card, putting it in the camera, and doing the firmware update that way. But if you tap the 3 icons when you're in the main kind of screen setup here, this is where you tap on firmware update. It'll connect with the camera that you've got attached to it. Look to our website to see, is there a firmware update for that camera? Now, my S5 Mark IIX has been updated to the 1.2 firmware that we published a couple of days ago. And yeah, just get you all set up. Real straightforward, works solid. Kudo asks, is the picture transferred over Wi-Fi compressed further, or the full image, the full thing is if it was imported on the media card? It is straight up whatever resolution you set it to be sent as. So if I look back at this image here, and I go to, say, only send the JPEG image, I select what my compression for that copy to my phone is going to be here. Large original means that it's the full-blown 24 megapixel image, no additional compression. Medium and small are going to compress the image smaller to save space on your mobile device. So you have choice here. Default, it's going to be set to original, and default out of the box basically is going to be set to JPEG. So yeah, you get tons of control with the app here. The other parts here that I want to talk about, I'm actually going to have to kind of change this around a bit because we are going to actually look at the camera. But I have to make one little change to my setup here so that I can show you. So bear with me for a second, y'all. Plug in that HDMI cable. And we're going to disconnect from the app. Cool. So now, let me go in and disconnect my Wi-Fi. So I'm going to terminate Wi-Fi connection. We are going to go into my camera, and then we're going to do something here. This is all inverted. This is why I didn't have both on the same time. Let's flip that so y'all can actually read what I'm doing here. Let's see here. Let's look at a couple of questions before we jump in. Just a reminder, if you have questions for me, tag at LUMIX USA so I can see them. Dominic is asking, the near and far shift function can be set to 2 custom buttons. Is there any way to set them both to 1, the FN button, for example? No, they have to be set to 2 separate buttons because they're 2 separate functions. So, if you want near shift, you would press near shift. If you want far shift, you would then press far shift. You wouldn't be able to do them to the same button because both of those modes are opposite of each other. So yeah, they're gonna be 2 separate buttons is what you have to set them up for in that case. So the last thing I kind of want to really talk about here is going to come down to the remainder of the Bluetooth functionality that you have with the newer cameras. So we said I'm on an S5 Mark IIX here. This will be the same for any of the current cameras that we have. So running the newer kind of UI. So think GH5 Mark II and forward. Yeah. When you go into Bluetooth, this is that menu where you're going to start and say do the setup for pairing. That's in here. So when I click on this, you'll see this is where I can go to set, do pairing, and then go through the process we did before. But this is also where you have setups here like remote wake up. So I can come in here and say, I want the app to be able to wake my camera up. Now, you have to remember that when you turn things like remote wake up on, it means that the Bluetooth is going to be running on the camera even when you flip the power switch off. So there will be more draw to the battery when it's been in the off mode. So just keep that in mind. If you do want to be using these functions, you will cause more battery drain using stuff like this. Then you have, when remote wake up is turned on, you have what mode do you want it to wake up to. You can do it to the import remote priority, which means that it's going to wake the camera up, and then it's going to connect the Wi-Fi if it's not connected already, and then it's going to go in to be able to set it up to say, hey, I'm set and we're ready to either go into image playback or we're ready to start doing remote shoot. Or you can tell it to just do remote shutter priority. This is really just the Bluetooth control on your phone that I showed at the beginning. Both of which are just designed to speed up the process of which of those control methods you want to be using on the camera, depending on your priority. So most of the time, I have mine set up for the remote shooting because usually I'm using this as my remote for triggering the camera for record. The next setups you have here is auto transfer. Now, auto transfer is a Wi-Fi control. It is not a Bluetooth control. But why it's in the Bluetooth setting is that this is so that the camera can know, hey, I've taken some pictures, I need to connect the Wi-Fi to then transfer those images to my mobile device. So if you turn this on, the camera's going to say, hey, launch the Sync app so that you can finish that bridge and make the connection there. So it's pretty straightforward. It gives you that kind of control for auto sending your photos over. I'm going to turn auto send off. Next up, we have location logging. Location logging on the newer cameras when you're using the Sync app is a straight up Bluetooth function. The app has to be open, at least within the system, and you have to have the camera's Bluetooth turned on. What it's doing is it's using your phone's Bluetooth location and over Bluetooth sending it over to the camera in real time. So as you take a picture, the times are synced, then it sends the location information to that photo and it embeds it into the file, both JPEG and RAW. So you can always set this up and have it, you know, always keeping your images located. So if you are someone who, say you're traveling with your camera, or you just like logging your photos through geolocation in your catalogs, really nice, straightforward way to do this. In the image app, you had to basically set this thing up. You had to set it up where you would sync your time, and then in the image app, when you were done shooting, it would bulk send the location data over based off timestamps. So a little bit slower, a little more kind of arduous to work with. The new system, much more straightforward, much easier to work with. Then you have auto clock set. This one I highly recommend. Another reason why I say to link up Bluetooth on these. Auto clock set, literally, it's going to pull the clock information from your phone and make sure your camera is set proper on time. And then you have your wireless network settings. This is where it will program in what Wi-Fi connections you've got stored in the camera. You've got your, in this case, a home Wi-Fi network, or you can program in a new one. So it just gives you that level of these are the things I want to have set. The other piece here is send images to your smartphone. This is where I can sit here and say, hey, I want to take multiple images off of the camera and just kind of go through and say, hey, I like these 15 images. These are the only ones I want to send over to my phone. I can select them here, and then the camera will handle doing the Wi-Fi connection, sending those images over, disconnecting from the Wi-Fi, and then you go on your merry way with your style of shooting. So lots of control in the Bluetooth side. Lots of flexibility for what you can do with this, and this is what's going to be set up in pretty much any way or any time that you want to work with this camera for like I said, almost any environment that you want to work in. If you're someone who loves shooting and having live preview on your phone, the remote shooting lets you do that. If you have an S5 Mark IIX or you have a GH5 Mark II and you want to do wireless live streaming, set it up through the app. Bluetooth is the connection that you need first on that, and then you can play around with it and just kind of use it to your benefit. You do have the ability, when you set up the Wi-Fi connection, to send while recording. That is actually done under the Wi-Fi settings here, so under Wi-Fi function. This will let me say create a new connection, either control it with my smartphone, so that is what we just covered, or I can do send images to PC while recording. This is basically, this is where I can have it constantly sending the photos to my phone as I'm shooting, so a Wi-Fi connection is always bridged. This is also how you can send photos from the camera on a Wi-Fi network. So if you're in a studio, this is also where you can go in and tell it, hey, send these files to this IP address. So if you have like a network attached storage or a NAS, you can have it sending to those. It's a lot more of a complicated of a way to shoot with it, and maybe I'll do a stream on that. I just haven't had enough people ask, like, hey, can you do a stream dedicated to that? Or you can do send stored images. This is you review the images and then send them over. So lots of different ways to go through and play around with the different settings there. Cool. We got a few more minutes left. That was the kind of main on the app. Two things before I jump into just kind of like general questions here for the last couple of minutes. Troubleshooting. The most common things that I get asked about with the app and troubleshooting when it comes to, why is this not connecting to my phone, are going to come down to permissions that you have set up on your mobile device. In the iOS world and in the Android world, the OSs have gotten a lot more strict on network connections that do not have a connection out to the broader internet. This basically means, in the most fundamental way to think about this, it means that if you connect your phone to the camera, your phone could think that that connection is not a valid one, and it basically quarantines the connection. On Android, when you do this, at least on my Samsung phones, you get a pop-up on the bottom that says, there is no internet connection with this. Do you want to stay connected to this, or do you want to not have it connect? If you're connecting on an Android device, select Always Connect. That will mean that when you do connect the two devices, it's not going to like quarantine that connection, or it's not going to refuse to connect to it. So when you have the Sync app open, it'll know and you're connected to it and you're good to go. On iOS, it gets a little more tricky. iOS is a little more strict on these kinds of things, but basic same rules. When you connect to the internet connection and it has no, when you connect the two devices over Wi-Fi and you have no internet connection, do it through the system's connection. So instead of doing what we did through the app, on iOS, you're actually going to go to your settings and hard connect them through that. Wait until it actually goes through and there's an IP address assigned between the two devices, and that connection doesn't have like an exclamation point, then open the app. This is pretty much an issue with iOS and Android. The apps haven't really kind of changed. It's more the permissions and the way the mobile devices kind of are updating a lot of stuff. They're updating really fast, and every once in a while you just kind of get caught in between when our app update gets pushed and then when an iOS or an Android OS update gets pushed. The other part here is the Bluetooth connection. On Android devices, it's not that big of a deal anymore. Once you connect the Bluetooth and you've already given the system permission to say, yes, these are connections that I have made and I want them kept open, you don't really have much of a problem. On iOS, you have to make sure that you are telling the system that the Sync app can run in the background. I guess in Android, you can run into some of these problems. The newer Samsung phones will try to remove permissions and put background apps to sleep. So you kind of just have to keep an eye on that a little bit. But primarily in iOS, the bigger problems come when the app isn't set to be allowed to run in the background. So if you minimize the app or your phone goes to sleep, sometimes you can run into a problem, but it just kind of causes a little bit of a headache sometimes. So keep those in mind while you're looking at these apps, or while you're looking at the app and you're working with the camera. Older phones tend to not have as many big of problems as this. Newer phones, it's usually just because you're getting way more updates now, so there could be a slight change that the iOS or the Android OS makes that the app has to get updated to, and that depends on whether or not these security updates are known to cause any of these problems. So yeah, just keep that in mind. For the last about 5 minutes here, we're gonna go till about 10 minutes after. Let's answer some questions here. We have one question here from KM Wong. I don't know if that is Kai or not. Maybe it is. It says, how safe is firmware updates via the app? Is there a chance to brick the camera? No. So, of course, you can brick a camera doing a firmware update. Usually those kinds of things are going to happen when it's like you pull a battery before the update is finished, or you do something catastrophic to the power. Our system is designed, and it's why we don't really do updates over USB connection to an app, and why, honestly, yes, you can do it over the mobile app, but I still prefer doing it over an SD card. It's just way more foolproof to do it that way. I've done firmware updates over the app. They take a little bit longer. The app has to download the firmware file, then it has to transfer to the memory card on the camera. Once it's on the memory card of the camera, then it's doing an update just as you normally would. The only issue you can run into doing it over the app is if for some reason it fails to download the file, or it fails to transfer the file from the app to the memory card in the camera. Those are really the only times you could have a problem there. So it's not really like you're going to brick the camera. It's more just you could get a failed update because either the file doesn't get sent over properly, or there could just be other issues there. But if the update fails in the middle of the process for, say, the file being damaged or something, the camera will just reboot, and it doesn't actually change anything on the camera. You'll still be on the previous version, unless you did a catastrophic power drop on it. Then you could cause problems. FC, is it possible to take photos using camera trigger button and show the latest photo shown on the phone display full screen? This simulates wireless tetherless shooting. A wireless tether shooting. You can, kind of. The way I do that is I set my cameras up for auto transfer. So I'll have my phone, like if I have my phone set up and I'm doing tripod work, I'll have this in a holder, and I'll have my Photos app open. So in this case, it's Android, so it's Google Photos. And my camera will be sending through Wi-Fi images as I'm capturing them. So within like a second to 2 seconds, that image will be sent from my camera to my phone, and then I'll see it in the thumbnails, and I can just tap on those images and cycle through them. So I get a higher quality preview of it to be technically tether shooting. It's not gonna be real time to where it will bring up the next new photo, but at that point I know I've got all this stuff on there for me to work with. Is there a way to disable one or both of the dials on the S52X without having to lock all controls? Technically, yes. If you go into the operation lock function, I have to remember where it is because I don't really use operation lock that often. Operation lock setup. And then here, you can choose what you want to have locked when you enable operation lock. So in this case, like I want my dials, I want the display, I want the touchscreen to work, I want joystick, cursor. So say I want, this is how it comes normally, everything's unlocked, but I only want to lock the dials. That's all I have to do. Now my cursor, joystick, touchscreen, and display button are still going to work. Even when I set operation lock, it'll just lock the top two in the rear dial. So hopefully that helps. When I use LUMIX Tether on a computer, I want to record to my CPU directly from the BGH1, and it always seems to record to my camera, then transfers to my computer after recording, not direct. That's correct. The tethered functionality, if you're over USB or if you're network connected, it is not using your external device as the storage device, because it doesn't know how to communicate with that as a storage device. The system will record. It's why typically you still have to have a card and a camera. It's going to record locally and then transfer those files over. Real-time transfer for an external device like that just isn't possible with the camera, mainly because in the box cameras, they don't have a fast enough USB port for it. The S5 Mark II X and the GH6 have 10 gig USB 3.2 ports, so those are 3.2 Gen 2. The box cameras, I believe, are the older 3.1 spec, so that's like 5 gigabit per second. So that's why it doesn't do it in real time. Derek says, behind you are cubes. I know it's a bit of a stretch. They appear to be... What? I mean, I have 2 motorcycle helmets back there. That's, yeah, interesting. It's an interesting stretch there. Let's see. LUMIX Super says, app should be more touch interface friendly. Should be able to select photo cells directly on the screen to access that menu instead of selecting the menu first. Yeah, there's definitely some improvements I think that we could make with the app. Recommendations like that, always awesome. We love seeing them in the chat and in the comments after. Ways that you would think you would want to see the app kind of grow over time. This is the second app that we've had. We had the image app first and then now this one. So we're always open to suggestions on ways that, you know, maybe it works better. Recently it was updated to be able to take use of, you know, like these larger screens that some of these phones are having now. So minor little steps. We are a hardware company, not necessarily a software app company. So let's see here. Are you going to have more updates for the GH5 Mark II? Possibly, probably. Honestly, not sure. I haven't been directly tied with that team for a little bit right now. Just because we have, you know, the S5 Mark II, the Mark IIX, a lot of that stuff. So I honestly just haven't been able to keep up too close on that kind of stuff. But yeah. Let's see here. Would not a more robust Bluetooth connectivity for functions be more advantageous and relegating Wi-Fi for streaming and file transfer, or did I understand that wrong? Bluetooth could be utilized a little bit better there. The biggest problem with Bluetooth really just comes down to the speeds at which you can transfer stuff. So like you kind of pointed out, streaming is done over Wi-Fi. File transfer is done over Wi-Fi. Bluetooth gives you control over, you know, shutter and stuff like that. But the way the app is set up right now is that any of the system settings, so if you want to change, you know, aperture, ISO, shutter speed, all that kind of stuff, it's tied into the Wi-Fi control of it, the live view control. So part of it's just how it's been designed, but recommendations on what you want to see more of, that would be really cool. You know, that's how we build and we evolve these things over time, is the feedback from all of you. Cool. With that, we are going to wrap this stream up. Oh, kudos question. What's your favorite movie? Don't know. Probably Pulp Fiction is definitely up there. Reservoir Dogs, maybe. Yeah. A lot of Tarantino stuff. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for all the interactions, the commentary, the back and forth in the chat. This is exactly why, you know, I love doing these streams. We will be back next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, same place, all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, still working out on the topics for next week. I've had a bit of a busy schedule over the last couple of weeks, between being in Seattle for a little bit for the Shutter Showdown project and some other stuff, just kind of working on trying to get everyone coordinated together, get some guests back on the stream. So hopefully we'll get y'all some updates on that. I am going to try to get Matt Fraser back on the stream. I know a lot of you guys love talking and chatting with him. So yeah, other than that, if you like the video and you're not already, appreciate the subscribe and a like to the video. If you know people that are maybe asking some of these questions and you saw something beneficial to them, recommend these streams, share it out to people that you think may be interested in joining them. And as always, if you have questions or if we didn't get to your question during the stream, drop it in a comment after this video goes live, after we're done with the stream. This way we can address it and try to get to it next week's broadcast, or if it's something I can address over text, I will try to get that addressed in the chat afterwards. Other than that, make sure to take a look at Lumix Pro Services if you're in the US. Red's free. Platinum is the paid service. Links are down in the description below. What am I missing? Other than that, for those of you that are in the New York area, I will actually be in New York attending a trade show along with Matt Fraser. It's the B&H Build Expo. So Matt and I will be at that show. If you are in attendance, swing by the booth. That is the first week of September, so a couple weeks away. We would love to meet you in person, chat about cameras. We'll have the plethora of stuff there, so definitely swing by. Who knows, maybe I want to do some sort of like meetup with everybody while we're out there. Maybe I'll be doing a live Lumix Live from the show, from the area. So if you're in there and you want to be on the stream, who knows? Still working out the details of that because it's in the middle of New York and there's a trade show going on. So still trying to figure that part out. But other than that, thanks everybody. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Get out there, create some cool stuff. Let us see it. Use our hashtags. You can always just hashtag Lumix. If you ever need to reach out to us, you can do it here in the chat, or we will have on the end card our email address that you can reach out to Lumix Live. And other than that, take care. See you next Thursday, 2 p.m. Later.